Right. Hello, everybody. Let's get this. Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Eno from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. And on Fridays, we have homeschooling stroke home education, depending on which part of the world you are, where I speak to a homeschooler or home educator who will be sharing the journey with us as to the reason why they decide to go on that journey, some of the challenges, some of the triumph, some of the highs, some of the lows, and how they overcome those. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so very much for coming on to the show. Kola, I really do appreciate you taking your time off to come to share your journey with us. Thank you so very much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Introduce yourself, tell us where you come from, and tell us about your journey. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. My name's Kaela. I am a homeschool mom to 4 girls. We are in Texas in the United States, and I was actually homeschooled myself. So I will talk a little bit about that. But currently, I'm homeschooling my oldest 2 children. So I have a fifth grader and a second grader, and then I have a toddler and a baby. So they'll be joining us in future, but not as of yet in our homeschool. And I create content on Instagram and YouTube sharing our homeschooling journey. I do reviews for homeschool curricula and resources and children's books and all sorts of fun stuff that kind of fall under that educational umbrella. Um, so now I'll talk a little bit about how I came to this point and my own path being homeschooled. So my parents homeschooled me from third grade through high school graduation, which for us is the end of 12th grade.
Okay. Sorry, when
So
you say grades, what year, what age? Because the viewers in the UK don't know the grades.
yes, okay. So let me clarify. So I went to public school until age 8.
Okay.
So I think about 2 years in the public traditional school system. And then my parents pulled me out, and from age 9 until about 17, when I was finished, with my main education, graduated high school, that's what we call it here in the States. I was at home. I did all of
Okay.
that at home. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So you were home from 9 to 17.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
okay, okay, okay. Right. So in the UK, it is primary, still primary school. So
Yeah.
you will be from primary, the last 2 years of primary school, to like end of when you finish school. So that's roughly where we are.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, of course. I did expect that there would be some differences there, but I wasn't sure exactly how to put it in UK terms because I've
Yeah.
never obviously been there. So yeah, my parents, it was very new at the time. Homeschooling was not the global force that it is now, where it's just growing and growing every year.
Mm,
This was the early 90s. Um, we didn't know anybody who homeschooled. I think the only way that my mom found out about it was like a random book that she saw at the library. And even then, a lot of the homeschoolers that you would see in the mainstream media were not, they were very different from our family.
mm,
As far as they might have been very religious, they might have been homeschooling for those types of reasons.
mhm,
So my parents felt, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm sure it was very challenging not really seeing a strong path represented for what you wanted to do. They were kind
mhm,
of making their own path for the first time.
mhm, mhm,
And the reason that they pulled me out of school was because there was some inappropriate things happening in my school at that time,
mhm,
some bullying, some inappropriate sexual activity happening, and this was with very young children, very young children. And when my parents went to the principal, maybe like a headmaster in your
yeah,
school,
yeah.
um, they basically kind of threw their hands in the air, didn't really want to do anything to address the issues that my parents had. And so my mother thought there must be a better way. Like, let's
Mhm.
just try something different. I'm the oldest in my family, so I was already the guinea pig, the experiment, you know? So this
Mhm.
was just another experiment for them. Like, let's just try something different. And so we
Mhm.
did. And pretty much every year growing up was an experiment. I mean, we
Mhm.
really did take it one year at a time. My mom was learning how to homeschool. She was learning on the job, you know, as they say. Every day she was learning how to do something. So there was a lot of trial and error. And I watched my parents deal with the trial and error. I watched them take it year by year. So every year they would actually ask me, "Do you want to go back to public school? Like, how are
Mhm.
you feeling?" They included me in the decision.
Mhm.
And I was always wanting to stay home. My two younger brothers had a slightly different journey. They started off homeschooling, and
Mhm.
then as they got older, I guess like around the end of elementary and also their middle school and high school years. So maybe around age 10 to like age 15,
Mhm.
they were in and out. So they would go to
Okay.
public school for a little while. They might go to public school for a year, come home for a year, or go for 2 years and then come home. But in the end, all of us graduated at home.
Right.
So it was
Mhm.
very, like I said, lots of trial and error, lots of
Mhm.
experimenting with different avenues. My parents tried charter schools. I don't know if you have charter schools in the UK, but that's kind of a different type of school from a public school.
Mhm.
Um, my brothers went to like a more specialized school that specializes in like science and technology. So they
Okay.
tried different things. They tried
Mhm.
different things.
Mhm.
In
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
end, though, I would say homeschooling was the best for everybody. It was the most
Mhm.
successful for all of us
Mhm. Mhm.
when
Mhm.
all was said and done. That was the choice that we all enjoyed the most. And for
Right.
me personally, I just loved the freedom that it gave me. I was very observant of my peers and my friends who were in traditional school,
Mhm.
because most of my friends were in school. I knew very few people who were homeschooled
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
that time. And they always seemed so tired. They seemed exhausted. You know, they got up at the crack of dawn. They were at school all day. They came home with tons of homework. And I was thinking, man, I've got it made in the shade. I am just fine where I am. I am just fine.
Mhm.
So I never had that desire to go back. I never felt like I was missing out on anything.
Mhm.
Um, I know a lot of people have the fear with socialization. I
Mhm.
had plenty of socialization. I had lots of friends. I was in ballet, I was in gymnastics, I was in dance. So for me, it was an easy choice.
Mhm.
Homeschooling afforded me way more time, way more freedom. It afforded me the chance to actually have a say in my
Mhm.
education because my
Mhm.
mother would ask me, "What are you interested in learning this year? Like, what do you want to cover for science this year? We're going to cover science, but you get to pick what field of science we'd cover, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, or what books do you want to read this year? Or what timeline of history, what era of history do you want to learn?" There was so much freedom there. I felt like I had a voice.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was amazing because it actually made me love learning. It made
Mhm.
me like love school
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
to me, school was free. Free
Mm.
school was freedom. And my friends viewed school as drudgery, a prison, you know,
Mhm.
being forced to do things that they had no interest in. For me, school was the opposite of that. It was like an adventure.
Mhm. Mhm.
When I became an adult, you know, I always in the back of my head thought, if I ever have kids, I think I would like to homeschool them because
Mhm.
of my own experience. And of course, years later, I got married. My husband and I talked about what we would like to do when we decided to have children. I mean, I knew from like my first pregnancy, this was something I really wanted to pursue. Before she was even of school age, I knew that was something that I wanted. And thankfully, my husband was on board. He was supportive. You know, he knew I had had a great experience. By that point, by the time I was an adult, I did know more homeschoolers. I knew
All
more
right, yes, yeah.
adults who'd been through the process.
Mm-hmm.
So we had more of a frame of reference. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
now we have YouTube. We have I mean, we have so many things that my parents did not have access to. So
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
it's actually so much easier now.
Mm-hmm.
The resources are endless,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely limitless where you can go. So that was very that was more of a stress point for my parents, was
Yeah.
trying to find resources. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have that stress point now, because
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, it's too many options. I need to narrow
Yes.
down my options.
Yeah,
But my
exactly.
parents were actually trying to look for resources to
Yeah,
use.
yeah.
So it's just so different now compared to what
Mm-hmm.
it was then, but all for the better. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's only gotten better, it's only gotten easier. It's easier to find community because we have these online spaces where we can
Yes.
connect with each
Mm-hmm.
other. We can share ideas. We can look at reviews of resources before we purchase them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, I'm sure my mom wishes that she had all of that at her
Then,
fingertips back in
yeah.
the day, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is very, very true. That because there is report that says homeschooling have grown from the time of COVID, because they're far more homeschooling now than they had during COVID period, and it's like it's on the increase because people are now choosing, what they're able to teach their children, and they realize that the system that exists doesn't support the child, especially if the child is a neurodiverse child, so that's out constantly. When you actually look at the report, it's constantly telling you that homeschooling is on the increase, and rightfully so. Increased choices.
Yes. Yeah, I just love homeschooling. We don't have any diagnoses in our home, but I do
Mm-hmm.
suspect some neurodivergence with some of my children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so comforting to know, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
that I can customize things for their needs,
Yeah.
that I can meet them where their needs are.
Mm-hmm.
And I never feel held back by my own knowledge and expertise or lack thereof, because
Mm-hmm.
I can easily educate myself, right?
Yeah.
I can get a book, I can take an online course, I can do the research, I
Mm-hmm.
can outsource to someone who's an expert in a certain
Mm-hmm.
subject area. It's just so custom. It is
Yeah.
so custom.
Mm-hmm.
And of
Mm-hmm.
course, it affords us so much more time together as a family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is just a huge, huge benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my top reason for doing it is the time.
Right. Yeah.
Because I get to see my kids grow up. I don't have to wonder, what did they do today? I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
ask them.
Yeah.
I'm with them almost every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
with each other. Those sibling bonds are so strong.
Mm-hmm.
That will be a foundation relationship that they have, hopefully, for their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think of all the time we would miss out on if we were separated for 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how long the school days are in the UK, but here they're quite long.
Right.
So even for really young kids, it's like 7 hours a day that they're gone.
Ooh. No, here is 6 hours.
Even for very young kids, I think with like preschooler, pre-K, it's like 5 or 6 hours, but by age 8, it's about 7 hours. And you get
Wow.
a little past that and it's like 8 hours.
Wow. That's
And then
long.
they have homework when they come home too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So the time that you're devoting to academics, I mean, you could have like a 10-hour day,
yeah.
literally. And that is just ridiculous to me. We don't expect adults to work that long. We would say it's unhealthy, right?
Exactly. It is very,
Let
very
me grab my
true.
baby.
That's fine. So she,
Okay. Sorry. She's a little fussy. It's okay. Go ahead, continue.
yeah. The other thing is, now that you're homeschooling your own children, what are some of the difference? That's one. Secondly, do you use a curriculum?
Yes, so differences, I think I've touched on a little bit. There's just so much more opportunity for outsourcing, for the internet just opened everything up, right?
Mhm, mhm,
But as far as resources and curriculum, I do use those.
okay.
And I also think that there's just way more options than what my parents had. So
Mhm,
as I said earlier, at least here in the States, when homeschooling first started, a lot of what was coming out as far as resources, curricula, had a religious slant. It was
mhm,
coming from a very particular group of people with very particular set of values. Not that
mhm,
there's anything wrong with that at all,
mhm, mhm,
but now there's limitless options. So you
mhm,
can really find something that fits your family's belief system, your family's values. So that's a huge difference.
mhm,
We
mhm.
often growing up would be using resources that we kind of had to edit,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
okay, well, this is, but that's not really how we think. And some,
yeah, yeah.
I don't really have to do that anymore. I can
Right.
actually find, more secular resources if I want, or if I want something that's faith-based, I can look for that. So there's
Mhm.
just way more options.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
of course, there's the online option too. So depending on the subject, my kids are using a variety of resources.
Okay.
Um, what's the matter? Do you need your pacifier? Hold on one second. I'm gonna grab her
That's fine.
pacifier.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. No, that's not.
Okay, sorry about that. My apologies. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's the beauty of, flexibility and online, etc. It's natural. It's nature. We're doing, there's
Yeah,
no, there's no faults. It's just what happened naturally, which is nice.
it's real life.
Exactly. Real time as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, you say you follow a curriculum. Is that curriculum you have devised, or is that already existing curriculum? And why have you identified that curriculum?
So it is a mix.
Oh,
Um, Literally almost for each subject, it's being addressed in by a different publisher or in a different way. And the reason for that is because I like a very eclectic mix, and I like finding things that meet the custom needs of my children. So I do a lot of research, and I just pick the best thing that suits for each subject. So for example, in our content areas, so things like science or history or geography, we do those as a family group style.
okay.
So I look for curricula that is not for a particular grade level necessarily, but something that can teach a range of
Mhm.
ages. Because my girls are 3 years apart.
Mhm.
So, and then I just try to tailor the work a little easier for my younger daughter, a little more challenging for my older daughter.
Mhm.
But the curricula that we use is made for homeschooling. So we use Bookshark for science.
Mhm.
We use History Quest for history. For geography, it's kind of a mix of a bunch of different stuff.
Mhm.
So those are kind of, and then like for art, same thing. I get art units from a homeschool company that makes art units, things like that. And then
Mhm.
with their course, I call them like the core skills, right? It's like math and reading and writing and spelling and learning cursive, all of those things. They can't really do those together because they're on very different skill
Level, yeah.
levels, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I buy particular things for each of them by their age or by their grade in those
Okay.
areas.
Okay.
Um, and this year, actually, for the first time, they're both doing math hybrid online and with me. So they
Okay.
have a video lesson that they watch online, and then they do their math work in a book, and I grade it.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a mix
Mhm.
across all the different things. I just try to find what works best in each area.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, what a typical day looks like for you guys?
So I always say there's no typical day
Okay.
because every day is different.
Mhm.
But we do have, a routine. So
Mhm.
typically, we're not morning people. We get up
Okay.
later than the rest of people. My kids usually get up around 8:30 or 9 a.m. And I tell them all the time, I said, all the kids have been in school for over an hour by the time you get up. And they go, yeah, we're glad we don't have to do that. So, we get up, we kind of have like a slow morning. They're allowed to wake up as naturally and slowly as they want to. We get ready for the day, we make breakfast together. And then at the breakfast table is where our school day starts.
Okay.
So we have what I call heart time. I know some homeschool families call it morning time or morning meeting, but it's basically just a way to start our day with a few different things that we want to discuss together. And I change that every year, what the lineup is.
Mhm.
This year we're doing some manners study, we're doing some poetry, we do PE during that morning time. So working out, physical education, we do that together. Let me see what else. Sometimes we'll listen to an audiobook. It's just some kind of group activity to kind of get our brains working, get us started,
Mhm.
have a conversation, get our body moving. That usually takes like anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes, depending
Mhm.
on what I want to do.
Mhm.
Then we
Mhm.
take a break and then we start. We'll take like a 10 or 15-minute break and then they start their math and language arts. That
Mhm.
usually takes like another hour.
Mhm.
Then we stop for lunch. And then we have like one more hour after lunch where we'll do a group subject like history or science or geography or social studies. We never are doing the same exact subjects every day. I have
Okay.
everything on like a rotation.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we hit stuff 2 times a week or 3 times a week, but we're not doing everything every day, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay. Okay. So what happened if you started a topic and you were hoping to for that topic to finish? What happens?
So if my kids are engaged and they're interested, I'll keep going as long as they're engaged.
Okay. Okay.
If they want to sit and do history for 3 hours in the afternoon, that's fine. But
Mhm.
I also know realistically that their attention span is limited. They're
Yeah.
children, right? They need
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
play, they need time to go outside, they need time to explore their interests. So I
Mm-hmm.
try to allow for that by not overscheduling us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, if they want to dive in and they want to keep going, okay, we
Mm-hmm.
will. We definitely will. Some
Mm-hmm.
days we do, and some days they're like, oh, I'm so done. I want to go play, or I want to go finish reading my book, or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it, our schedule allows for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 Thank you. Do you guys go out, in terms of social? Yes, it's, three of them, so they have, they're able to socialize among themselves, but how do you allow them to socialize externally?
Yes. So at least she's so loud. At least 3 times a week, we are out with people.
Okay.
We have a homeschool co-op that we do field trips with, that we meet with. We also have our church group that we're with. So they have friends of all ages and ethnicities and backgrounds through that. We have a very diverse church group, which I'm grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we go to the park and we go on hikes and they meet people and make friends along the way there too.
Mm-hmm.
And we will exchange phone numbers or exchange information. We've already met other homeschoolers just at the park on accident, so that happens too. But at least 3 times a week, we're out with people. We're in our community.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. How do you teach them? Because in schools, our teaching is very much done through textbooks,
Right.
right? So, how do you teach them in terms of whatever content you want them to learn?
So we do use books. We very rarely use textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do. If it's a really well done textbook, I don't have anything against the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
But I prefer to use picture books. I prefer to use, we have a lot of like DK books, books that are really beautiful visually, books that
Mm-hmm.
have lots of information. And
Mm-hmm.
then the difference is that we read them together. So we'll cuddle up on the couch and read that information together.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of reading together, and then we also will watch videos
Mm-hmm.
about whatever information we're studying. We do a lot of worksheets. We do a lot of hands-on activities. We do a lot of crafts.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make sure that we're covering visual, we're covering auditory, we're covering kinesthetic. With every lesson, we're doing something within that realm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I find that's how my children learn best, when they're active with multiple different learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
love to read, but they also love to watch videos, and they also love to paint, and they also love to make things with clay and, whatever. So I try to tie in as many different things as I can into a certain subject that we're learning about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You say hands-on. So how, what do you teach them that you actually enable them to do it hands-on?
So I'll give an example. Our science curriculum has lots of hands-on experiments and demonstrations.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a science experiment at least once a week. At least
Mm-hmm.
once a week, they're doing hands-on. And at least where I live, they don't start doing science experiments until like age 13, 14 and up.
Mm.
And I'm able to do that with my 7-year-old.
Right,
So
yeah,
she's
yeah,
getting a lot of experience doing that she wouldn't have in public school.
right, yeah, yeah.
Um, for history, we made our own parchment paper. We made our own pyramids out of Lego. We made our own catapults when we were studying the Middle Ages. I'm sure I could think of more, but lots of
Okay,
examples like that. Yeah.
okay.
We also love games. So, for example, when we were studying ancient Rome, I found a card game that had all of the Roman gods on
Okay.
it with their different attributes. And we played that card game several
Right.
times when we were doing that study.
Okay, okay, okay.
Um, so yeah, it's a variety. It's a wide
Mm-hmm.
variety of activities.
Mm-hmm. 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 So, in terms of your journey as a homeschooler, right? Were you given the choice to go to university if you wanted to?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. My parents,
She's having her own conversations.
I know she really is.
So
Uh,
beautiful.
my parents abided by the local state standards that we have so that I could get a diploma, a real diploma, and then go and take my diploma and my records, my credits, high school credits, and go enroll in college. And so I
Mhm,
did go to college locally. I was an English major with geared towards children's literature. I did
mhm,
not finish. That was a
mhm.
personal choice that I made, but I did go. I was
Right,
able to go. Um,
right.
so I do think that homeschooling can afford people the opportunity and should afford people the opportunity to pursue higher education if they so
Mhm,
desire. That's
mhm,
definitely my goal with my own children,
mhm,
to
mhm,
give them that ability if they decide to go to college or university or anything, medical school, whatever they want to do.
mhm,
Hopefully they have the foundation to do that.
mhm, mhm. So, how does your children feel now in terms of being homeschooled?
They love it as of now. I follow my parents' example where I do give them the choice.
Mhm,
I keep the lines of communication open with them.
mhm,
I don't ever want them to feel like I'm holding something back from them or
mhm,
restricting them in that way.
mhm,
So
mhm.
I ask them, I'm so sorry. She's so
No, that's
chatty.
fine. That's fine.
Um,
That's fine.
I ask them every year if they would like to go, if they want to try it out. And so far they've said no. They have
Mhm.
friends who are in public traditional school. They also
Okay.
have friends who are homeschooled. So
Right.
they get to see how their friends' lives are different from each other or similar.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really given them a good chance to sort of make their own choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
should they decide to go to school at any point, I'm open to that idea. But I'm
Mhm.
also very honest with them about what that would really mean,
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
what the time restraints would be and how our lifestyle would change. And so, with all of that in mind, as of right now, they're very happy to stay at home and
Right.
homeschool.
Right. Thank you for that. Do you think that homeschooling prepare children for to navigate the world? Do you think it's, because you had a little spell in the mainstream education, do you think that in comparison, homeschooling and the traditional education, which one do you feel that better prepare individuals for the world of work and to navigate society?
Well, I want to be careful not to totally disparage the school system because
Mhm,
there are wonderful teachers, there are wonderful administrators. My husband actually works for our local school district.
mhm,
There are people who are very passionate about helping kids and preparing them for the real world.
mhm,
So, is it possible to be prepared for the real world going through that system? Yes.
mhm,
Do I think it's going to be the very best option for a lot of kids? Probably not,
mhm,
because it really, for me, it comes down to resources.
mhm,
When you're going to a
mhm,
public or a traditional school, a government funded school, you are beholden to them. They're deciding who gets what resources.
mhm,
And unfortunately, that means a lot of inequality in education. It means
mhm,
that your education is going to vary widely
mhm.
depending on where you live, your race, your socioeconomic status, your background, right?
Yep.
There's only so much we can control as far as that.
Mhm,
But when you are homeschooling, you
mhm.
can control almost everything. You
Yeah.
can find the very best resources. Even when your budget is very limited, you can
Mhm,
still find really great resources.
mhm,
You can customize the experience to the child. You can help them if they have challenges like dyslexia, autism, ADHD. you can customize to their needs.
Mhm.
And you can also customize to their interests and their
Mhm.
passions.
Yeah.
You know, I have one daughter who literally was born an artist from the, I mean, I can't draw at all. She started drawing before she could talk.
Mhm.
And to this day, she makes art every single day. She's 10 years old now. Every single day, she creates something,
Mhm.
whether it's drawing, painting, clay, sculpting, whatever, you know, she has to do it. It's inside of her.
Mhm.
And I often think, how would that have been limited if she had been in the school system?
Yeah.
You know, when she was 4 years old, we went to go tour. We were thinking of putting her in school,
Mhm.
talking about our options. We went to tour a local Montessori school, not even a public school, not even a traditional school, but a Montessori school, because I thought that would be a better option.
Mhm.
And I asked them, how often do the kids get to do art? Because that was really important to me. I knew my daughter.
Mhm.
And they said once a week. And I
Ooh.
told my husband, she
Yeah.
cannot be here,
Exactly.
because that would have crushed her
Yeah.
to only be able to do art once a week.
Yeah.
She wakes up and does art. I
Mm.
mean, that is the first thing that she wants to do. That's how she starts her day. It's often how she ends her day.
Mhm.
It is a
Mhm.
part of who she is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my other daughter, completely different, completely different. She loves science. She wants to go into the medical field.
Right.
I can customize their
Mhm.
education to meet their passions
Yeah.
in a way that a school system cannot do.
Yep.
Not because they don't want to, not because the
Mhm.
educators aren't interested in the kids, they don't love the
Mhm.
kids, they do. They're limited by the resources, they're
Yep.
limited by the time,
Yep.
they're limited by having to take care of 20 or 30 students with
Mhm.
all different needs, you know?
Yep.
There's
Yep.
just limitations there. And with homeschooling, I feel like there are far less limitations,
Mhm.
to the
Yep.
point where it feels like there's almost no limitations.
Exactly, which is very true, right? Thank you so much for that because that's very, very true. At least, she's actually supporting a passion, whereas the school would have crushed that because school really suffocates creativity, not because they intentionally want to do it, but because they don't have the time. And when they get to school, is content, contents, contents. It doesn't matter what else you're interested in doing, we're going to push this content down your throat. And that's what happens. And, yes, it is very, very true for that. Thank you very much. Another thing is, yes, we know the highs and the lows. What were some of the lows for you in terms of homeschooling?
So I said earlier that my favorite part is the time that we have together.
Mhm.
That is also a low point sometimes. Um, Being with your children 24/7, even
Mhm.
if you are a saint, which none of us are,
Mhm.
it is exhausting. It is
Yep.
the most rewarding work, but it's also the most draining work. And a lot of people, when you tell them you're homeschooling, they go, "Oh, you must be so patient. I could never do that." I go, "I am not patient. That's the problem, you know?" Every single day we have to deal with that challenge of
Mhm.
my impatience, their impatience with each other. It can be hard, you know. So I try to make sure that we get breaks from each other. I try to encourage some solitude, time to ourselves, to reconnect with ourselves, refocus, whatever it is, relax. That's been really important. Also, I think for me, I'm naturally an academic. That's just who I am.
Mhm.
I thought for a long time that was because of homeschooling, but I don't really think it was, because now I've seen, you know, a child born an artist and a child born a scientist. And
Mhm.
me, I just love to learn about everything. I really love to read and study. And I think that's just a personality thing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So my expectations are not always reality.
Mm-hmm.
My expectations of, oh, my children will love this as much as I do, not always the reality. My expectation of, they're going to want to read all of this with me and we're going to sit for hours and hours and do, not always reality. So adjusting my expectations, trying to be more realistic, trying not to control everything, trying to make sure they have freedom and they have their voice heard in our homeschool, that they can make academic choices and educational choices. That's been challenging, but I feel like we are really in a good place now. We're in a good groove. This is my 7th year homeschooling. And finally, I feel like, okay, I think I have a good balance now of what I want to do versus what we actually can do versus what they want to do, right? You have to take everything into consideration.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not easy. I would never tell someone anybody can do it. It's easy. It's work. It's hard work, but it's so worth it. It is so worth the effort to do it.
Thank you for that. Do you outsource any part of your, your homeschooling journey?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one?
Right. Do you outsource any aspect of the homeschooling thing you do?
So far right now, the only outsourcing we're doing is a little bit for math.
Okay.
I have in the past outsourced for other things. They've taken online art classes before. They're not doing that this year, but that's something we've done in the past. Um, hmm, that's probably it though. Most of it I teach myself.
Okay.
Most of it I teach myself. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Why do you feel that you are the best teacher for your children?
I'm so sleepy.
I say that she's tired.
She's so tired. She's just fighting it. She's fighting it. I feel like I'm the best teacher for my children because I view education, at least in primary education, right, as an extension of parenthood. So I often tell parents who are doubting themselves, doubting their own ability to educate their children, who taught them how to talk? Who taught them how to walk? Who taught them how to use a fork and a spoon? Who taught them how to go to the toilet or bathe themselves? We teach our children from the moment that they are born. We teach them. And if we don't know how to teach them something, like, for example, potty training, you go, how am I going to do this, right? What do? You go read a book, or you go to a website, or you take an online course, and then you feel empowered and you go teach your child what they need to know. That is exactly what homeschooling is. It is parenting your children, knowing your children, seeing their needs, their interests, their passions, their weak spots. And then if you don't know how to help them, you find the people who do, you learn it, and then you do it. Of course, that's an oversimplification, but that's really the at the core what it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The final question. If someone, thank you very much for that. If someone is thinking of homeschooling their children, what 3 tips would you give them to enable them to actually go on that journey? Because you are passionate about it, it's very clear on that. How would you actually empower someone to take that plunge?
So the first tip that I feel is essential is know the laws in your area. Make sure that whatever you're doing is legal, that you're going to set up your children for success to where they can go to college, university, whatever. They have that record. They have the records they need to do that, right?
She's
That's the
busy
first tip.
talking. She's busy talking.
That's the first tip, is just look up your local laws, whether it's your state laws or whatever country you're in, to make sure that you're doing things according to that way. Unfortunately, we still have to meet the system standards, right? We need to make sure our children are on par, but we can adjust how we meet those standards. Okay. So find out the standards, find out the laws. And then the second thing is really take time with your child before you jump in with any formal academics or curriculum. Really take time with your child, especially if they've been in school and you're pulling them out to bring them home. Take some time. Take some time to talk with them, observe them, let their natural routine of the day come out. Because maybe they're a late sleeper or maybe they're an early riser. You don't know because you've just been rushing through the schedule of the day. So take time to just let that natural, whatever's inside come out, observe it, write it down, take notes, what are they interested in? And then from there, you can actually go into how do I want to proceed? What style of homeschool do I want to have? What resources, what curricula, if any, what subjects do we want to cover? But if you try to jump to that last step first, you'll be in trouble. You'll be overwhelmed, or you might even make some purchases and decisions that don't work for your family. So that would be my advice. Try to see who the people are in the homeschool before you make the homeschool.
Thank you for that. You said think about what style. What do you mean about what style?
So there's lots of different styles of home education. There's unschooling where you don't follow a formal curricula at all. It's very child-led, interest-led. There's some styles that are really popular in the States are like Charlotte Mason or Montessori or Waldorf. Those are all sort of following the specific pedagogy of a person, an educator, right? Maria Montessori was an Italian educator. Charlotte Mason was a British educator. The Waldorf style is by Rudolph, I want to say like Rudolph Steinman or something. I don't remember his name. So those are some styles. There's also traditional style where you do use textbooks and, you're kind of implementing what it would be like at school, just on your own terms. There's online schooling. There's all sorts of different things, avenues that you can use. There's also classical education. Classical education puts an emphasis on like Latin and, things like that, right? So don't limit yourself. You don't have to necessarily fit into one of those boxes, but at the very least, I would say educate yourself about them so that you know what your options are. Because as you go out shopping, if you Google homeschool curriculum, you're going to start seeing those names pop up. You'll see this is a Charlotte Mason style, and you're going to go, what on earth is that? Or this is a classical style. A great book that you can read if you want an overview of all of those styles is called Wild and Free. Let me see if I can find the author's name for you. She actually goes over everything and kind of just gives a really brief summary of all of those styles.
Okay.
And so that's a great book to read for new homeschoolers or people who are thinking of it. So the book is called The Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment.
Ainsley
Arment. Arment.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And that was a book that I read in the beginning. It really helped a lot just to understand what all the words mean, because it's like a whole new language. It's a whole new community. And we don't want to make people feel like outsiders, but sometimes we do just because we talk over their heads.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
educate yourself, become familiar with the terminology at least a little bit. You don't have to be an expert right away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You can do that simultaneously while you're observing your child and taking time with your child.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That would be my suggestion. Read some books on homeschooling, get a little bit of an idea of what it's all about. So
mm-hmm,
that way you feel more confident and equipped when you go to find your resources or find your curricula. If that's what you choose to do, you kind of have your bearings.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to say to us before we say, thank you and goodbye?
One more thing that I jotted down in my notes that I feel is so important.
Mm-hmm,
When we're preparing our children for life in
mm-hmm,
the real world and the future, there's a lot of foundational skills that we know they will need,
mm-hmm,
right? There's
mm-hmm,
also a lot of unknown.
mm-hmm,
We don't know what fields or career paths will be open. There's probably fields that don't even exist yet.
mm-hmm. Yep.
So the best thing that we can do and the most essential thing we can do, in my opinion, is have your children love learning. If
Mm-hmm,
you can instill in them by your example and also by your time with them that learning is fun, it
mm-hmm,
is enjoyable, it is a worthy pursuit, that simply learning something is of value all on its own, whether or not you use it, it's powerful to know something.
mm-hmm,
You're going to have children that are prepared for anything because they
mm-hmm.
are going to know how to learn. They're going to know where they can find knowledge and they're
Yes.
going to have a desire to learn. They will feel
Mm-hmm,
ignited by learning.
mm-hmm.
And that's going to set them up for success no matter what they do, no matter what path they choose, no matter what paths are open to them and available
Yeah,
to them.
yeah.
So that's my goal every day is how can we love learning?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how do you do that?
By allowing my children to have a voice in our learning.
Right, right.
Because when children have a voice, when they have a choice,
Mm-hmm,
they feel like they are an active participant.
mm-hmm,
They're not a vessel that's getting filled with knowledge. They are
mm-hmm,
actively pursuing knowledge
mm-hmm,
and it becomes a joy
mm-hmm,
for them. And they will see their own progress
mm-hmm.
because they will actually be putting in work to reach the goal rather than just having the work given to them.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's how I'm hoping that we're meeting that goal.
yeah.
And so far, I feel like we are. Hopefully, that will continue.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Thank you so very much for that. Is there anything else you want to say to us?
I don't think so. I covered everything in my notes.
Thank you very much, Kola. I really do appreciate you taking the time to come and discuss your journey with us, and it was fantastic. The 3 points you give were fantastic. And one of the things you say, which is really, really interesting, is the children are not vessels in which we put content in. They need to be participating. Thank you so much for that. The importance of letting them have a voice from which they'll be able to do so much with. Thank you so very much for taking the time off. What's your baby's name?
This is Winifred. We call her Winnie.
Okay, hi Winifred.
Thank
She
you
obviously is
so much
very
for
talented.
having us. I apologize for the interruptions, but
No,
hopefully
no, no, no,
everything
no.
was still coherent.
No apology is necessary. It's just wonderful, because this is what motherhood is all about. We have our children, they're
Yeah.
there with us. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
The power of being, child friendly, which is wonderful. We have to.
Yes.
They are the future.
They are. That is
Ex-
true.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so very much. And please reach out to any other homeschooler who want to share their journey with us, please, so they can actually come on and share their journey, because everybody's journey is very different. We are going to the same destination, but we all taking different routes to get there.
Okay, that's wonderful. I will definitely let people know to contact you then.
Yes, thank you. And I will be sending you the video either this afternoon or tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much, Debbie. Nice to
Thank
talk
you.
with
Take
you.
care. Have a great evening. Bye
You too.
bye.
Bye.